Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to evaluate the REASON9 online root cause analysis system. In a moment, I'm going to show you the reason process being used on a real case. And what we hope to show you is why reason is the most powerful and easiest to use root cause analysis system on the planet. Well, let's go ahead and get started. In a moment, I'm going to tell you a little bit about an actual event that occurred, and we're going to do an investigation on it. And what I want you guys to get out of this is a sense of, by just having a little bit of information about the case, I'm not going to give all the details of it, but just enough for us to get started doing an investigation. And what I want you to get out of it is the sense of how this process actually is a repeatable process and how it pulls you through the process of ordering what you know and your investigation to order the facts to come away with a model of all the facts and how they combined, in which ways, and how they rubbed and touched each other, the different facts, and at what points in time they did that, so that you can clearly walk away with an understanding of how it happened and see the windows of opportunities along the course of the story where you and your team can focus your knowledge and expertise to see how things could be different. How could we engineer different controls in these windows of opportunity along the story of our event? Which is the whole purpose for root cause analysis to begin with. So let me give you a little bit about the story. Essentially, this is a very simple case. Gentleman is working, feeding metallic bonding scraps into a compactor. He is feeding them in there, and the compactor jams. He looks in there and sees the bonding scraps, and he thinks he can pull them out and it'll be okay. And so he begins that process. Now he feels safe in doing this because he knows that there is a cutoff switch on the door. As he opens the door and is feeding these scraps into the unit, he knows that this cutoff switch cuts off power to the unit while his hands are in there. So he feels like he's safe. But what he doesn't realize is, that he can't see, because the lights above him have burned out and he's really kind of in a dimly lit worked area, is the actual switch is missing. Did it break off? Was it taken off for repair? We don't know, but it's missing. And if he had seen it, he wouldn't have stuck his hands in there. But he does. He sticks his hands in there. He's pulling on these scraps. He's pulling on the materials. And he inadvertently bumps the start switch, and it causes the machine to cycle. His hands are in the unit. He crushes his hands. This is the event. Again, there's a lot more to this case, but I've given you enough that we can begin the investigation. Let's do that. So we're going to start a new model here. We're going to go to the Pro model, and this is a change, definitely an event that we want to investigate. And the event in our situation is something like the employee's hand became crushed, something like that. So we put that in there, and we click OK, and it goes up on the timeline and asks us up at the top, do we want to explore this effect? And of course we do, and we click OK. And the software brings up the first reason question really for us. Enter the last event that occurred that guarantees that effect of the crushed hands, given the conditions, unless something interrupts the process. And so what is the last thing that happened that guarantees his hand being crushed unless something interrupts the process? And it's the compactor cycled, something like that. You can say things any way you want to. It behooves us to use complete sentences. It's going to help our documentation later. So the software down here below asks, if it cycles, does he crush his hand every time? No. And so now it's going to ask us, so it must be something more. So the software says, if needed, what other conditions existed up here on the timeline before that compactor cycled that combined with the fact that it did cycle to produce his hand being crushed? Is there such a thing? And we say, yes, there is. And we hit enter here. And the thing that is, when that thing cycles, what condition has to already be true for his hand to become crushed? Obviously, his hand has to, as a condition, be in the compactor when it cycles. So we just type that in there. Again, you could have said that any way you wished. And hit enter. So down below, now we're asking, the logical equation changes. If his hand's in it and it cycles, does that equal a hand getting crushed? Indeed it does. And so we click yes. And it moves us into a different gear. It's now looking for missing conditions, conditions that would have been a barrier to this issue. If these conditions had existed in this period of time before the compactor cycled, the employee's hand would not have been crushed. And so we don't have any, and so now we're looking at a different point in time. Between the point in time when the compactor cycled but before his hands became crushed, is there some action we could have actually gone out and done during that period of time, that window of opportunity? No. So it brings us to the accuracy check again, and it's asking us if the compactor did not cycle and yet his hand was in it, would it have crushed it? And no, of course. And by saying no here, we have just logically validated that we can't take away the fact that the compactor cycles. It is a logically requisite fact in our case. And of course, so is his hand being in there too. So we say no, and the software wants to move us on to the next step. Now notice that the fact that we've moved down, and now we're dealing with, why did the compactor cycle? Do we want to continue on? I think we do, so let's click OK. So what is the last thing that happened in time that, given that it happened, this event occurred, guaranteed that it was going to cycle unless something interrupts the process? And essentially it is, when the last thing that happened that guarantees that cycling is when he bumps that button. And so when he accidentally presses that button, the actuator button, let me hit enter here. But is that enough? Every time we press a button, does it cycle, or do other things have to be true as well? So it's not sufficient. So it's not enough just by itself that we press the button. So we go click no, and again we're looking for conditions. It's not enough by itself. There must be some other conditions ahead of time before that he pressed the button that combine with it to produce the cycling. So we click, we want to insert one. And so when he pressed the button, what things had to be true? When he pressed the button, that unit had to have been energized. That's something, that's a condition that existed before he pressed the button. So we type in here simply the compactor was energized, it was powered, or however we want to say that. And so now we're asked, if we got an energized unit as a condition and we press the button, does it cycle? Is that enough? And we say, well, if you have energized unit and we press the button, sure. And it moves us on. Now we've changed gears again, and it's now asking for what barriers in terms of conditions, what permitting conditions, what things were not in place that we wish could have been in place during that period of time before he pressed the button that would have prevented it from cycling. We say, yes, we can think of one. Do you remember that switch that was missing? We have no idea why it was missing. That cutoff switch on the door. The power cutoff switch was not present or was missing from the unit. However you want to word that idea, that concept there, and hit enter. It goes in there. Now I just accidentally clicked somewhere and the software doesn't know what I want to do. It thinks I want to do something manual. If you do that, you can just click the next button and it restarts this questioning process again. It's asking, is there another a condition? And no, it moves us on to inaction. And again, after the employee pressed the button, but before it cycled, is there something we could have run out and done between that period of time and that window of time? Not really. It's a pretty fast compactor, really not time to do anything. So we would come up and click on no inactions. And then it asks us, okay, if he pushes the button, the unit is energized and that cutoff switch is not in place, is that enough? And then it goes on and says, do we have too much? Can we take away the fact that he pressed the button and still it's energized? No. Can we take away the fact that it was energized and this still happens? Leaving the rest of the equation in place? No. Can we change the fact that the cutoff switch was missing and still leave it powered? No. You need all three of those things to logically explain this. Now, we've been building these one set at a time, but let me show you what the model we've been building. This is the traditional reason set, the consequent or the effect on the top, and the ingredients that add up to cause it to happen below. But actually we're building a model, and this model, as we built more sets, would become larger and larger. Here we've only built two below the what our unwanted event was, but you can come up here when we're through and you would continue this process down until you discovered root causes, those things that we didn't do that would have established control at a point in time. When we discover those, we've discovered root causes. And so you can print out the model, you can print out reports of many different kinds. There's a wizard that guides you through conducting a professional level root cause analysis report on this as well. Well, that's the nickel tour of the REASON9 root cause analysis system. There's a lot more aspects to it, but hopefully this was something that kind of gave you a feel for whether this would be a fit for your organization. If you are in the process of evaluating systems and would like to have a live demonstration of this, perhaps on an event that is something more real world for you, please contact us. Our web address is www.rootcause.com. Thank you for including us in your evaluation. Have a great day. Thank you.